Sometimes the heart keeps beating even after it breaks. Amy Fleming, once full of love and light, faced the darkest storm when she lost Ty. The man who stood by her, fought for her, and built a family with her was suddenly gone. And yet, she didn't give up. Instead, she chose to carry his memory forward, one quiet day at a time. But what no one saw coming was that a new story had already begun to grow inside her, one heartbeat at a time. Amy's life at Heartland after Ty's death was filled with silent strength. Everyone saw her smile for Lyndy, work with horses, and keep the ranch alive. But behind those calm eyes was pain she learned to live with, not erase. She threw herself into motherhood, making sure her daughter had everything she needed. Amy became the anchor for her family, even when her own world had drifted. The girl who once needed help was now helping others heal, just like she used to with Ty beside her. People in Hudson noticed Amy's quiet strength. Jack watched her from a distance, always proud, always concerned. Lou visited often, trying to fill the spaces Ty had left behind. Tim offered advice, sometimes too much of it, but it came from love. Life slowly found its rhythm again. Amy began to smile a little more, laugh sometimes, and even ride like the wind again. But still no one knew if she was truly happy, or just surviving for those around her. And then, small things started to change. Amy grew quieter during the evenings. She paused often when Lyndy talked about babies or daddies. She touched her stomach gently, almost without thinking. And there were moments, just brief ones, where her eyes filled with tears for no clear reason. At first, everyone thought it was just the weight of memory. But there was something more. Something deep, delicate, and new. Something Amy hadn't spoken about yet, not even to herself. Was it possible, after all she had been through, that Amy was ready for a new chapter? One that carried both sorrow and joy. One that would change everything again? Because in her silence, a secret was growing. A heartbeat, soft but strong. A baby boy. And with him, the promise of a second chance. Everyone thought Amy had simply found her balance again: ranch work, motherhood, and family. But if you watched closely, there were signs. Small, quiet changes. Moments that felt just a little too heavy with emotion. It wasn't what Amy said. It was what she didn't say. And for those who knew her well, the silence spoke louder than words. It started with Amy staying home more often. She'd let others handle the horses while she spent time alone in the house. Sometimes Jack would ask her to ride out with him, but she'd smile and say she was tired. When Lou mentioned going to town, Amy would suddenly say she had chores. To outsiders, it seemed normal. But her family began to notice her pulling back just a little. Then came the scene with the family photo album. It was a quiet afternoon. Amy sat at the kitchen table with Lyndy, flipping through pictures of when Ty was alive. She traced her fingers over his face, and for a moment, her hand rested on her belly. It was a small motion, gentle, almost like she was shielding something. Jack noticed, but didn't say a word. There was another time in the barn, when Caleb offered her coffee. She paused, then politely declined, saying she was cutting back on caffeine. It was a simple answer, but Caleb gave her a look, a knowing look. Later, he even mentioned it to Lou. Amy's been acting different, he said. You think she's okay? Lou had already been wondering the same thing. Amy had been more emotional lately. She cried during a family dinner when Lyndy said something sweet about Ty. She snapped at Tim during a minor argument, then apologized right away, blaming it on stress. Lou thought about asking directly, but Amy was private. If she was going through something, she'd share it when she was ready. The biggest clue came one morning when Amy was seen walking by the lake with Katie. The two sat quietly on the grass. Katie later told Lou, and Amy looked at the sky for a long time and said, "Maybe life can surprise us again." Those words stuck. What did she mean? Lou didn't know, but she could feel that Amy's heart was holding something big. As Season 19 begins, the camera lingers a little longer on Amy's thoughtful face. Her hands often rest on her belly when no one's looking. Her smiles are softer, slower, and more emotional. She looks at Lyndy like she's holding the past and the future in her arms. The clues are there. We just didn't want to believe them at first. Could Amy really be expecting another child? Could life be offering her a new beginning? A baby, born not to replace what she lost, but to remind her that love always finds a way to return. And in the soft glances, the quiet pauses, and the protective way she touches her stomach, the answer becomes clear. Amy's silence is not empty. It's full of life. It wasn't a big speech. It wasn't even planned. The moment just came quiet and powerful, like so many of Amy's choices. The truth had been building for weeks. In her eyes, in her silence, in her gentle touches to her belly, when no one was watching. But now, there was no hiding it anymore. The moment of truth had arrived. And it changed everything. Amy stood in the loft, sunlight spilling through the old wooden windows. Jack had come up to talk, just a regular visit. But something about Amy's energy stopped him. She wasn't busy. She wasn't distracted. She was still, calm, her hands folded over her belly as if guarding something precious. Jack raised an eyebrow. "You all right, kiddo?" he asked softly. Amy looked at him, and her eyes filled with tears, not from pain, but from something deeper. Joy mixed with fear, sadness mixed with hope. She nodded slowly, then said the words that shook the air still. "I'm pregnant, Grandpa. It's a boy." Jack didn't speak right away. His jaw clenched, his eyes shimmered, and then, without a word, he stepped forward and wrapped her in a strong, silent hug. That hug said everything. He knew what this meant, not just for Amy, but for the whole family, for Ty's memory, for Lyndy, for the future. The news spread quietly but quickly. Lou came home and found Amy sitting by the fire. "I have something to tell you," Amy said, with that familiar trembling smile. Lou's face went pale, then flushed with emotion as Amy shared the news again. She was shocked. "Amy, are you sure?" Amy nodded. "Yes, I've been to the doctor. Everything's okay. He's healthy." Lou hugged her tightly, her voice trembling. "This baby, he's a gift." Later that evening, Amy sat with Lyndy in her room. The little girl was brushing her horse toys, unaware of how much her life was about to change. Amy sat beside her, kissed her head, and whispered, "You're going to be a big sister." Lyndy looked up, blinking. "Really?" Amy smiled. "Yes, a baby boy." And just like that, Lyndy's face lit up. "Can we name him like a horse?" she asked. Amy laughed for the first time in days. A real laugh, pure and full of light. But behind the joy, questions lingered. Who was the father? Was this something Amy chose alone? Was it something deeper, a step toward healing? The answers didn't come yet, but they would. For now, the family clung to the beauty of the moment. A child was coming. A boy. Not a replacement. Not a fix. But a new chapter written with all the love, pain, and strength that made Amy who she was. And in that quiet house, filled with memories of Ty, laughter and tears came together. The family smiled again. They cried together. They held each other. And in Amy's womb, a small heart beat strong. This wasn't the end of the story. It was a new beginning. The news spread like a quiet wind across Heartland, soft, steady, and deeply moving. Amy was expecting a baby boy, and though she said the words with calm, they hit everyone around her like a storm of emotions. Not of shock or judgment, but of wonder, worry, and something else. Something sacred. For the first time in a long time, the house didn't feel heavy with silence. It felt alive again. Like hope had walked back through the front door, Jack sat alone on the porch after Amy's reveal, staring out at the land he had worked for most of his life. He wasn't a man who cried easily, but that evening, he wiped the corner of his eye. More than once, Ty had been like a son to him, and now his bloodline, his spirit, would carry on. A baby boy, growing inside the woman Ty loved most in this world. Jack whispered under his breath, "He'd be proud of you, Amy. So proud." And the wind seemed to answer him with a warm gust, like Ty was listening. Lou, on the other hand, went into protective big sister mode. She checked on Amy constantly, brought her herbal tea, scheduled doctor appointments, bought baby books, even though Amy had done it all before. "You're not alone in this," she said, over and over. But it wasn't just about support. Lou had her own fears too. What if Amy broke again? What if the baby stirred up more grief than healing? She tried to hide those thoughts, but they lingered in the back of her mind. Tim didn't say much at first. He just stood in the barn doorway when he heard the news, his face unreadable. Later, he found Amy brushing Spartan and simply said, "It's a brave thing. What you're doing." Amy looked up, unsure how to answer. Then Tim added, "I know. I wasn't there when you were born, but I'm going to be around for this one, every step of the way." It was his own quiet way of asking for forgiveness and promising to be better this time. Even Caleb, who had been a longtime friend and support system, came to her with wide eyes and a crooked smile. "You've got guts, Amy," he said. "You always did." That little guy in there hit the jackpot. And then, under his breath, "So did Ty." But the most touching moment came from the smallest person, Lyndy. She had questions like all children do. "Will the baby like horses? Can he sleep in my room? Will Daddy see him from the stars?" Amy answered each one with love, never brushing her daughter off. And one night, after a bedtime story, Lyndy hugged her mother's belly and whispered, "Hi, baby brother. I'm your big sister. I'll take care of you." That was when Amy cried, not because she was scared or sad, but because somehow everything felt right. Like the broken pieces of her life had not been lost, just waiting to come together in a new shape. And in the heart of Heartland, surrounded by memories, horses, family, and open sky, that new shape was beginning to form a future built not from forgetting the past, but from carrying it forward, one heartbeat at a time. The joy was real, the love was strong. But beneath all the smiles and gentle hugs, one quiet question began to echo through the walls of Heartland. "Who is the father?" Amy hadn't said a word about it. Not to Jack, not to Lou, not even to Lyndy. And the silence was louder than anything she could have spoken. People tried not to ask, out of respect, but everyone was thinking it. And Amy, she knew they were. She walked through the ranch like nothing had changed. But everything had. Her belly slowly growing, her eyes a little softer. She carried herself with strength, but also with something new, something secret. It wasn't shame. It wasn't fear. It was peace, as if she had made a choice that no one else could fully understand. Some believed Amy might have chosen to do it alone. In today's world, a woman could choose motherhood without needing a partner. Maybe it was her way of keeping Ty's memory alive, raising another child. Not from grief, but from love. Lou, though confused, respected that idea. "If anyone has the heart to raise two kids on her own, it's Amy," she whispered to Jack one night, but not everyone was convinced it was a solo decision. Some whispered another name, Finn, the man who came into Amy's life during her healing journey. They had shared quiet moments, deep talks, even laughter when Amy thought she had forgotten how. But then he left. There was no goodbye. Just distance. Still, could it have been him? Could a spark from the past have left something so life-changing behind? The town had its own theories. Caleb hinted once, "If there's someone, she's keeping him hidden well." Lisa, wise and gentle, told Lou not to pressure her. "When Amy's ready, she'll tell you everything." Or maybe she doesn't think she needs to. But Amy's silence wasn't just about privacy. It was about protection. Not for herself, but for her child. She knew what people would say. Some would question her. Some would judge. And she didn't want this baby born into gossip or rumors. She wanted him born into love, pure and full. In her private moments, Amy sat on the porch Ty built with his own hands. She looked up at the stars and whispered to the night sky, "I don't know what tomorrow brings, but I'll make sure he knows you." Whether the baby's father was someone from the past, or simply her own decision for a future, didn't matter. What mattered was that Amy was ready. She had made peace with her pain. She had found courage in her choice. And perhaps that's the real beauty of it. The baby boy growing inside her wasn't just a miracle of life. He was a miracle of strength. A reminder that sometimes love doesn't need to come from another person. Sometimes it rises from within and brings with it a whole new kind of future. Amy had always been strong, but this time, her strength looked different. It wasn't just about holding back tears or moving forward. It was in the way she began to prepare. Not for the ranch, not for the business, but for something much more personal. A tiny new life. Her baby boy. And in that quiet, powerful way Amy had always shown love, she began to build a world for him piece by piece. It started in the old nursery, the one where Lyndy had once slept. Amy opened the door, and thus floated in the sunlight like tiny memories. The crib stood in the corner, still solid, still safe. She ran her hand along the wood. Ty had built it himself. Her eyes welled up, but she didn't cry. Instead, she smiled. "We'll use this again," she whispered. Amy didn't rush anything. Every day, she did a little more. She painted the walls a soft sky blue. She folded tiny clothes with gentle hands, and she picked up old toys, holding each one like it held a story. Jack brought her an old rocking chair from the barn, still sturdy despite the years. "He can fall asleep in your arms just like Lyndy did," he said. Amy nodded, her heart full. Lyndy helped too. She drew pictures for the baby and taped them to the wall. Stick figures of horses, a smiling sun, and a house that looked just like Heartland. "He needs to know what home looks like," she told her mom. Amy kissed her forehead. "He already does. Because you're here." The family came together in small but meaningful ways. Lou started dropping off baby blankets and little hats. Lisa brought herbal teas and warm food. Even Tim stopped giving advice and just showed up to help. One evening, he surprised Amy by fixing the broken porch light outside the nursery. "Babies don't like the dark," he said with a crooked grin. Amy didn't speak, but her eyes said thank you. Still, the hardest part was sorting through Ty's things. One box remained untouched in the attic, full of old letters, baby clothes, and one tiny cowboy hat he had once bought for Lyndy. Amy sat with the box for a long time before opening it. Every item inside held a piece of her heart. And instead of feeling pain, she felt peace. Ty was still with her, in memories, in love, and now, in the baby that would carry part of him forward. Amy also spent time in the barn, speaking to her horses as if they understood. Maybe they did. They had seen her through her worst days. Now they'd be there for her best. Spartan stayed close, always watching her like a guardian. Sometimes when Amy placed a hand on her belly, Spartan would nudge her gently as if to say, "I know." And late at night, when the ranch was quiet and the stars blinked overhead, Amy would sit by the fire and dream about the life growing inside her. She didn't have all the answers. She didn't know what the future would hold. But she knew one thing with her whole heart: this child was coming into a world full of love. A world that had been broken. A woman who had been hurt. But both had healed in their own time. And now, something new was blooming, small, strong, and full of light. The wind was calm that evening. The sun dipped low behind the trees, painting the sky in soft gold and pink. Amy stood outside the barn, one hand resting gently on her stomach, the other holding a tiny blanket she had folded earlier. The same barn where she had met Ty, kissed him for the first time, fought with him, healed beside him, and now, where she stood alone, but not empty. She wasn't just Amy Fleming, the horse whisperer, or the girl who lost the love of her life. She was something more now. A mother carrying a second chance. Everything at Heartland had changed, and yet nothing felt broken anymore. The cracks in her heart were still there, but they had softened. She no longer tried to fill them. She simply let love grow around them. And in that quiet love, a new story was beginning. Not as a replacement, but as a continuation. Jack sat on the porch, watching Amy from afar. He didn't say a word, but his smile said everything. Lisa sat beside him, holding his hand. Lou was inside, helping Lyndy wrap a small toy horse for her future brother. Tim leaned against the fence, his eyes thoughtful, his heart steady. There was peace in the air, not the kind that comes from silence, but the kind that comes after a storm, when the world feels washed clean and ready for something new. Amy looked up at the stars. One star in particular always caught her eye. She liked to think Ty was there, watching, smiling, maybe even laughing softly at how life had turned out. "You'd love him," she whispered, thinking of the baby. "He's already so strong inside." The nursery, the crib was ready. The walls were soft blue, filled with drawings and warmth. And though Ty's hands hadn't built this room this time, his spirit was in every corner. In the way Amy folded the blankets. In the way Lyndy promised to sing lullabies. In the way the family came together, stronger than ever. This wasn't just the start of a new season for Heartland, it was the beginning of a new legacy. A child born of love, strength, memory, and hope. A boy who would grow up hearing stories about his father, not just who he was, but what he meant to the people who loved him. Amy no longer feared the unknown. She had faced loss and didn't run from it. She had faced loneliness and didn't hide. And now, she faced motherhood again, not from a place of pain, but from courage. This baby, this little boy, was not just a gift to her. He was a gift to everyone who had followed her journey from the very beginning. As the night settled over the ranch and the stars blinked above, Amy turned and walked back into the house, her steps light, her heart steady. A chapter had ended. Long ago, yes. But now, with love reborn and life blooming again, a new chapter had begun. And this time, it started with a heartbeat.